parts 1 and 2 of this series, we talked about the writer and literature coming out of one's inner silence, and the reader, how the reader can be led into that inner silence, and how the reader can appreciate literature better by evolving and by understanding the 7 states of consciousness. Now I'd like to look more to the mechanics of literature. So what is literature actually? How do we define it? Maharishi Mahesh Yogi defines literature as that writing that is helpful to the path of evolution. So what does that mean, and how might it work? We've already talked about the silences in poetry, how they might invite the reader to transcend surface levels of the mind and slip inward to a more holistic and integrated levels, and that would be evolutionary. That is, as the mind experiences its silent levels more and more often, it becomes increasingly capable of maintaining that silence and activity, and this leads in time to cosmic consciousness, the state of enlightenment. Meditation is a much quicker path, of course, but transcending on music, mathematics, sight, sounds, they all culture the nervous system to some degree. There's another aspect to literature, and all fields of study actually, that work to culture the nervous system. Now, in a talk called The Nature of Learning and the Progress of Knowledge, which is included in our volume of Maharishi's talks on literature and language, The Flow of Consciousness, Maharishi explains how literature has an evolutionary effect upon its audience, because literature swings the reader's awareness from concrete images to abstract ideas and feelings and back again. He says, the whole personality gets refined because there is that very concrete appreciation of something. Then there is that very abstract appreciation immediately after that. And this expands consciousness, and intellect expands awareness. Let me stop here and illustrate this. So here is a poem by Kabir, who lived in India, late 15th, early 16th century. And the poem is called This Clay Jug. So we have an image of maybe a little clay jug. This clay jug. Full of surprises. Okay. Inside this clay jug, there are canyons and pine mountains, and the maker of canyons and pine mountains. All 7 oceans are inside, and hundreds of millions of stars. The acid that tests gold is there, and the one who judges jewels. And the music from the strings no one touches, and the source of all water. If you want the truth, I will tell you the truth. Friend, listen. The God whom I love is inside. So we start out with a clay jug. What could be more concrete than that? And it soon becomes obvious that Kabir is not talking about a clay jug, because inside of it are canyons and pine mountains. So we are swung from the image of a clay jug to a vision of canyons and pine mountains, more abstract, and all 7 oceans and hundreds of millions of stars, very abstract. He then mentions music and then says it's from the strings that no one touches. And water, but where and what is the source of all water? So the mind goes back and forth from these concrete images to the abstract notions of infinity. The clay jug is this one, huh? This clay jug, the body, not the little clay jug we were first thinking of, but this clay jug, isn't it? And all this abstract, infinite reality is inside me, inside you, because it's what our consciousness is made of and can connect with. So Maharishi says, and the more these opposite values come together in an expression, he explains, the more literary it becomes, and the more cultural value there is in it. It cultures the emotions, cultures speech, cultures the intellect, cultures the whole personality. This is the value of literature. And how does this happen? In part, he says, because the process of swinging the awareness from concrete to abstract is a process of giving, he says, jerks and jolts to the awareness and to the emotions, and is a process of purification. It's a process of purification, he says. All that is unwanted filters out. All that is life-supporting remains adhering to one's consciousness. This is the purifying value of the process of gaining knowledge, of study. And he expands it to all fields of study. So, when contrasting values are brought together in compact expressions, and one comprehends through them the entire course of evolution, all the mechanics of the evolutionary process, then he says, in the talk entitled The Quantum Theory of Literature, then that impulse of consciousness is fulfilled, because then it is enlivening the total potentiality of life. It is enlivening bliss consciousness. And why is this? Because these greatly contrasting values are what make creation, what make the world, point and infinity. And again, from that same talk, he says, there is the transcendent value, completely abstract, unmanifest, unbounded, the ground state of life, pure consciousness, and simultaneously there are rigid boundaries, small pieces of time and space, both together. This is the vision of cosmic consciousness. Let's have a few more jolts and jerks. Here's a poem by modern American poet James Wright. The title is almost longer than the poem. It's called Lying in a Hammock at William Duffy's Farm in Pine Island, Minnesota. Over my head, I see the bronze butterfly asleep on the black trunk, blowing like a leaf in green shadow. Down the ravine behind the empty house, the cowbells follow one another into the distances of the afternoon. To my right, in a field of sunlight between two pines, the droppings of last year's horses blaze up into golden stones. I lean back as the evening darkens and comes on. Chicken hawk floats over, looking for home. I have wasted my life. Ooh, what a shock. I've wasted my life. What does he mean? The mind moves to try to grasp the meaning. Might he mean that you should have spent more time in the hammock? Less time on other pursuits? Did you have a thought, I have wasted my life? That would be a natural response. And that response, both responses, what does he mean, and have I wasted my life, they take your mind inward. They take your mind onto your own self, or in that direction, and to a state that brain research called the default mode network. Now, one of the researchers at MUM, Fred Travis, has linked this default mode network with the TM technique. So as one is practicing the TM technique and transcending, it overlaps that default mode network. So that's what meditation does, and that's what literature can do. It can take you to that, turn inward to that default mode network. Very good place to be. Very good place to be. Maharishi says that when contrast occurs on the level of meaning, what the thing means, it's a joy to the intellect. It's the expansion of the intellect. It's the enlivenment of the full potential of the intellect, which is a joy to the ego. So there are other aspects of the evolutionary nature of literature, such as rhythm and melody, and beauty of expression, and practical values such as life lessons, so one doesn't have to make mistakes and suffer needlessly. So the study of literature can even bring wisdom. The study of literature is to make one wise, Maharishi says. Wise means spontaneously capable of right thought, right action, right behavior. This can only come by stabilizing pure consciousness. The subject matter of literature is not really an issue, because a highly evolved writer can take any kind of subject matter and turn it into what Maharishi calls a process of unfolding the full potential of life, of developing that pure consciousness. And this can be, Maharishi says, because consciousness contains the entirety of the universe. Think Kabir's poem. All the laws that are responsible for every activity in the cosmos, all these are in that flow of consciousness, in that flow of the unmanifest. All this is available, he says, in the field of literature. So, one more poem before we conclude. This is an Emily Dickinson poem, one of my favorites. It's called My Period Had Come for Prayer. My period had come for prayer. No other art would do. My tactics missed a rudiment. Creator, was it you? God grows above, so those who pray, horizons must ascend. And so I stepped upon the north to see this curious friend. His house was not. No sign had he by chimney, nor by door could I infer his residence. Vast prairies of air, unbroken by a settler, were all that I could see. Infinitude, hadst thou no face that I might look on thee? The silence condescended. Creation stopped for me. But awed beyond my errand, I worshipped, could not pray. It's a wonderful poem, huh? Great swings of awareness. Contrast between prairies, unbounded prairies of air, and broken by a settler. Doors. The speaker's looking for God, but can't find any concrete indication. No house, no door, no sign, no chimney. What is there? Only vast prairies of air, unbroken, unbounded. Infinitude, she implores. Let me see thy face. And what happens? The silence bends down to her, takes her over. Time stops. And in that awe, there is no place for an individual desire. No, just awe, appreciation, the true nature of worship. A very expanding poem that enlivens the heart and intellect. I'm sure you felt something of that. So Maharishi had a very elevated vision of the value and purpose of literature. He said that the study of literature is a very great training in life for living the absolute. Literature is a very, very great field for comprehending evolutionary processes on the intellectual level and experiencing them on the level of consciousness. No matter what one sees, he says, one sees evolution there. And because evolution is one's own nature, one sees one's own nature in everything. And this reference to the self makes everything enjoyable. So the study of literature would even go so far as to develop unity consciousness. So that's it. Meditate and enjoy and read. Read literature that gives you a taste of silence, of joy, and of enjoyment.